I was talking to this friend of mine about another friend, and I said, "Well, she's eccentric, and that's what people called me for years. But I view myself as completely normal. But as I've gotten older, I realize that I am sort of different than some people, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way. I just mean some of my behaviors aren't in the quote norm. I'm straight. I am straight, but I'm not married." And I think a lot of people find that like not, that's like not normal. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like that, to have like a wife and kids, that's normal. I never really had any desire to do that. I always was concentrating on production and making things ever since, you know, it's like the girlfriends really fuck up my production. They do. I can't concentrate on shit. I want to work on something, but I can't because you have to, like if you're in a relationship, you have to sort of appease the person and do things you don't really want to do. So being married, it would be worse for me and I would be very uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? So I was talking with this friend of mine, well, she's eccentric and sort of crazy. And then it was like, well, she's not crazy. She's sort of, and that this is what I said and this is what I thought. In her mind, her behavior seems normal. Like my behavior is normal because I've rationalized it and I've thought about it, comparing myself to other people and, my surroundings. So, do you understand what I'm saying? So, like, it depends on your perception of yourself, like what is normal. So I don't like to go out, and I know that on a podcast, they like fucking dropping a sandbag on my head, like, asking me a question like, how long will you like leave the animals? And I know to other people this seems eccentric, that I don't want to be gone for more than 2 hours. I start being miserable, start worrying about them. They're in my fucking, either in my studio or my home, unattended. They're not running around loose, but what if something happened? And you might say, well, there you go, Peter, you're acting crazy again. You're thinking crazy, like about, what if? But that's an uncontrollable. If it was a human being that was in my house, like say if I was married, I wouldn't be worrying about that human being because the human being could generally get out of the house if there was a fire. Do you understand what I'm saying? If some unforeseen thing happened, there's nobody here to keep an eye on the animals. I know that to a lot of people I seem like a freak, But, I'm sort of paranoid about my own dog, so I'm going to be paranoid about someone else's dog. So, do you understand what I'm saying? So that is why I do this job of like dog training, being around dogs. It's not that I prefer, just so everybody's very clear, they say, well, you prefer dogs or other species, birds, to your own species, and that's not true. That's not true. That's an idealized view of somebody that might be considered eccentric and has more than one dog, or is in this line of work and has, you know what I'm saying? Like that's an idealized view, but that's not really the case. I prefer human beings. I do. It's my own species. That's why I'm always like sort of like weirded out when people like when I was talking about my friend to my other friend saying, well, she's eccentric, but she sees herself as completely normal. And me as like looking at her, I'm like, well, she's sort of eccentric. She's sort of crazy. Eccentric's a term that we use for people that are viewed sort of crazy but harmless. I saw something recently on TV and I had to turn it off, not on TV, but on Hulu or Netflix, and it was the Eccentrics or something. It was just a bunch of people that dressed funny, and sort of like look at me. And I'm like, people have called me eccentric, and I'm calling my friend, well, she's sort of eccentric. She's sort of different. Now, these people on the show, the Eccentrics, sort of like just a flair for fashion, if you ask me. Sort of like look at me like it was a guy's job. He was a mermaid down in a Florida show, right? So they're calling him eccentric, like he wants to be the merman or something, It's all just bullshit. It's like this idealized version of like what eccentric is, you know. I personally have sort of been offended throughout the years when people call me eccentric to my face. They can do it behind my back, but don't call it to my face, because I'm really not. I'm very normal. I am. I'm a normal guy. I just, you know, I hang out with pets and make art. What do you want me to say? It's really about my production, and it's always been about my production. And that's the same thing with my friend that I'm talking about. She is an artist. And actually, when I met her, I thought, oh my God, this is true. This is true. I even have said this to people that know this person. I said, well, she's a genius. She is. She's a genius when it comes to making art. I can spot it. I can spot it. So anyway, if anybody calls you eccentric, it's not necessarily a put down. It's just they're just saying you're different. I have a friend, Margie Schnibby, out there in California, right? She always says, well, you're crazy or something like that, but she'll say it about herself too. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, she's another artist. But people are crazy. Everybody's sort of eccentric in a way. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that everybody is an individual and not, you know, it's very rare you meet somebody that like walks the straight and narrow, you know? Like, I'm going to do everything society expects me to do. You know, even my father, the diehard Trump fan, you know, he was very eccentric in a lot of ways. Conservative, yes, but very eccentric. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I hear it all the time on my YouTube thing. They don't call me eccentric. They usually call me a meth head. You know, the guy that's been sober for 20 years. That really bothers me, though, when somebody says that. That's not really being a compliment. However, with that said, when people have made comments about LSD or something like that, referring to my stuff, I take that as a compliment. I do, because that's a lot of my art and a lot of my videos. It's like, you know, like if you've seen my art, here, look. I make a lot of animatronics that sort of like Walt Disney on acid, and I've known that I make this, you know. Speaking of eccentrics, we will include the Krofft brothers, Sid and Marty Krofft. Eccentrics for sure. Bigfoot and Wildboy, HR Puffin stuff, you know. Eccentric, and probably did some acid. It's the truth.